Hey guys, it's me, Shaw360, and this is my last review for Descendants of the Sun, episode 15 and 16. My last review for the series. There is going to be 3 more parts. There's going to be highlights, behind the scenes, interviews, and an epilogue. I won't be reviewing those. So this is my last review for the series. And for the last 2 episodes, I feel like it was kind of a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but everything kind of wrapped up, so that's good. I was not always pleased with everything that happened in the last 2 episodes. I feel like the last couple of weeks were probably better finales than what we actually got as a finale, but with all said and done, I have generally positive feelings about this series. So let's start with the recap. So Big Boss and Dr. Kong, they have their same little playful relationship. He gets discharged from the hospital. They have a couple of dates. Lieutenant Yoon and Wolf, they're still kind of on the outs. They have a date, but it's kind of a frosty one, and they still haven't kind of decided if they're going to get back together or not. Well, after that, we see Private Key on his way to go take his GED exam, and who's waiting for him at the gate but all of his Special Forces friends, and they're just like, good luck, buddy, and they give him treats, and they give him advice, and it's just really nice to see the family come together to support their own. So as he's walking through the gates on the way to take the test, all the guys' phones start ringing except for Wolf, letting them know that, it's mission time. So they all head back to the base to get ready to go on this mission, and Wolf is kind of looking a bit dejected because, this is what he would be doing too, but he gave his discharge papers because he wanted to marry Lieutenant Yoon. But he gets a call from the commander to come up to the office, and General Yoon says, hey, we haven't found a replacement for you, so until such time, you're going to go with the rest of the Special Forces guys, and you're going to go on this mission. It's a 3-month mission, but, we don't have anybody else that can go besides you. So he's excited to go, but of course that means that, he's got to kind of let Lieutenant Yoon know that he's gone, and they're not really talking right now. So rather than call her up and say, hey baby, I'm leaving, instead he takes his dog tags off and wraps them around her door, which when you take your dog tags off, as we all know from previous episodes, that means this is one of those missions where if they catch you, you have no alliances to anyone. Big Boss also has to tell Dr. Kong that he's going to be gone to the department store for 3 months. And they have a hug and, a little tearful goodbye, and he's off, which I don't know about you guys, but there was no kiss when he got ready to leave. And if my man was leaving for 3 months, I didn't know if he was going to see him again, you'd get a big kiss from me. I'm just saying, my personal preference. But over the course of the 3 months, Dr. Kong is leaving text messages for him. Now, he doesn't write her back, except for to say he arrived there safely. But it's something that I guess she uses as a comforting mechanism for herself to, tell herself that he's still kind of out there. He's still present. He's still a presence in her life. And she's dealing with, crap stuff at work. Dr. Bitch trying to get her to get a company that belongs to her relative to get a contract with the hospital for blood pressure medicine, little stuff like that. And Lieutenant Yoon and Dr. Kong are meeting each other at cafes and stuff while the guys are gone, and they're growing their friendship, which I like that. They were kind of, I wouldn't say adversaries, but they had their dispute about an ex-boyfriend near the beginning of the series, but it's nice to see them come together as, I won't say spouses of military men because neither one of them are married to these guys, but kind of the same general thing, support systems for these military guys. So while they're in the cafe drinking and wishing the guys would come back home, we get a glimpse of what's going on with these guys and their work, and it turns out they're in this war zone. There's vehicles ablaze, you can hear gunshots, there's a chopper that's taking, I think it's Piccolo and Snoopy back to base with some civilians, and there's no room on the chopper for Big Boss and Wolf to get on, so okay, well, we'll wait down here for another 10 minutes, there'll be another flight out. Well, they're standing in the middle of this clearing. Big Boss is kind of joking, yeah, we'll be out of here soon, we'll be back home, drinking soju, whatever. All of a sudden, a shot rings out that pierces him from the back and exits through the front, and it looks like this one really hit him this time. And so as he's on the ground bleeding out, and Wolf is like trying desperately to, close off the wound, he's having these flashbacks of when his friend got shot. He's thinking about all these other soldiers. He's thinking about Dr. Kong. I mean, his life is kind of flashing before his eyes. While that's going on, Wolf is trying to, stop the bleeding, but he gets shot too. So that kind of throws him away from Big Boss. And up in the sky, Piccolo and Snoopy are trying to get radio contact with Big Boss and Wolf. They're not able to, and when they look down, there's a huge explosion at the spot where Big Boss and Wolf are, and it is assumed at this point that these two are dead. I mean, definitely for the TV audience, it did not look good. So they come back to Korea, and General Yoon is waiting for them at the tarmac to, find out how the mission went, because it was an important mission. And also, I guess he was going to deliver the news to Wolf, like, hey, guy, this was just letting you know you can still be in the military. Well, the other three guys, Piccolo, Snoopy, and Harry Potter, show up, and they're like, we couldn't recover the bodies. And, it's devastating. It's devastating because when General Yoon gets back, the first person he has to call is Big Boss's dad. And Big Boss's dad walks in, and as soon as they make eye contact, he knows what it is. And to watch this old man crumble, that was probably the hardest scene of the entire series for me to get through. Like, I thought the old man dying in the earthquake under the boulder was bad, but this one, it just really got to me. I'm an Army brat. My dad was in the Army when I was a kid, and this was something that, when you are a family of a military member, especially active duty, you just never want this to happen to you. And especially because Big Boss's dad has already lost his wife. His son is basically his only family, and now that son is gone. And to watch this man, this really proud man, crumble as he's handed his son's last will and dog tags, it just can't get any worse. It just cannot get any worse. But it does get bad. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that for me. I mean, there were still plenty of teary moments, but that particular scene just did me in. Like, my nose was stinging, my eyes were running, like, I went through it. But then the rest of the letters start going out. The little spy for Lieutenant Yoon, who used to always spy on Wolf and tell her what he was doing during the day, he goes to her office to tell her, Wolf's not doing anything anymore. And then Dr. Kong, the guy who hates Dr. Kong from Special Forces, he shows up at the hospital to deliver the news to her because Big Boss had written a will out for her, like a last letter or whatever. So she goes in the hospital to read this last letter. Of course she's sad. And when she reads it, she immediately runs out to find Lieutenant Yoon because, they've been a support for each other while waiting for their men. And I don't guess it's really real for her until she talks to her. Well, Lieutenant Yoon has gone to confront her dad about this because, as far as she's concerned, this is her dad's fault. Her dad did this. If he hadn't sent him on this dangerous mission, he'd still be alive. Which, it's a knee-jerk reaction, honestly. It's hard to process this news. You go through the several stages of grief, and you got to have somebody to blame, and her dad was just the easiest to blame. She knows it wasn't his fault, but at the same time, she's completely heartbroken right now. So Dr. Kong makes it over to the base, finds Lieutenant Yoon, and after looking at her with her letter in her hand, it's real. It's real. So both of them are going through their grief. The Lieutenant Kiss-Ass goes to Dr. Kong's place to have her sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, because the mission they were on was that mission where you had to leave your dog tags behind. So they can't tell the public how these two died. So they're going to say it's a car accident, and she's got to sign this agreement saying that she won't tell anybody anything else otherwise. And, she's kind of like, I can't believe that these men risk their lives for our country, that they save people and they ensure peace, and we can't even say what they've done. Like, they'll die unacknowledged. But she does it because she feels like that's what Big Boss would have wanted her to do. So a year later, and Lieutenant Yoon asked to be sent to Urk, and Dr. Kong decides to do a volunteer trip in Albania. On the way to Albania, she runs into Daniel at the airport, which is really strange. He's doing a sit-in to protest drug companies. I don't know. But she's in Albania because that was the country where she was told that Big Boss died, and it's his 1-year death anniversary coming up. So she just wants to be in that place to be closer to him, and also to set up his memorial. Because I guess in Korea you usually have a memorial on the 1-year anniversary. So she's there in Albania, helping people out, everything else. Daniel's talking about how the drug companies are causing people to die because they don't have access to drugs. And she's out in this desert scene, which that was kind of weird to me because it looked like the place where Big Boss and Wolf got shot at was like in a town, not really in the middle of the desert, but she's out in the middle of the desert with these rock piles to leave like some flowers and to leave that pebble that her and Big Boss had for that trip to Urk. And the pebble keeps rolling away, and she drops the radio, and over the radio she hears Big Boss's voice, and he's like, turn around. She pulls out her cell phone, all her text messages are being read, and I mean, it feels kind of spooky. I was thinking, oh shit, it's a ghost. No. Over the sand dune, who comes out? Big Boss. And of course, they have that tearful reunion. She's like, you're alive! Oh my God! She's like, yes, I told you I won't die. And that's the end of episode 15. So, cue episode 16, and after getting over the initial, like, oh my gosh, you're alive, then it's like all the stages of grief kind of in reverse, which was really interesting. Like, she was emotionally all over the place. They go back to the place where she's staying with the volunteer troops, and once they get there, it finally occurs to her, maybe this is a fucking ghost. So a guy from their little project, I guess, comes by her room, and he's like, hey, how's it going? And she's like, do you see that guy over there? And he's like, yeah, he's cute. That's your boyfriend? So that's the confirmation she needed to make sure that he was alive. And of course, Big Boss pretends to be offended. She gets a phone call from the guys at the hospital because, everything happens coincidentally in these parts. And she's got them on FaceTime, and they look behind her back, and they see Big Boss eating his memorial meal. And the first thing they're thinking is, it's a fucking ghost. Girl, run. But Onu, being, the, wise one, is like, I just need you to tell him that it's okay to let go. Whatever unfinished business you had with Big Boss, you need to go ahead and finish it now. Tell him his spirit is free. Because they think that like he's back there eating his memorial meal as a ghost. And of course she doesn't really she kind of lets the misunderstanding linger on. It was a cute scene. So that's what's going on with them. On the other side of the world, I guess, is Lieutenant Yoon and Urk, and Private Key is there, but he's no longer Private Key. Now he's like Sergeant Key, which is pretty awesome. And he makes her ramen, kind of, have a meal together to remember their shared love for Wolf. And he looks out the window, Key does, and he sees the snow. He's like, wow, it's the first time it snowed in Urk in 100 years. Lieutenant Yoon goes outside to enjoy the snow. When she turns around, who should be walking around the corner but Wolf, looking like death warmed over. And he's like, I'm sorry. I won't ever break up with you. And of course she's just like, shut up, I just need to kiss you. I can't believe you're alive. So they have their reunion. And then Sergeant Key now is talking to the new recruits, make sure you take care of yourself, be healthy, be safe. And when he turns around and look, there's Wolf right there. And, Private Key, we don't know much about him, but we do know that his relationship with Wolf is really important to him. And so when he sees Wolf, he, of course, cries like the little kid that he is, even though he's a soldier now. But still, it's highly emotional for him because this guy practically saved him from the streets. So for him, this is like his father figure. So you can imagine how much it broke his heart to hear he had died, and to see him back, he just couldn't take it. His little heart couldn't take it. But that was really cute. And then Wolf explained to Lieutenant Yoon kind of what happened with them. And apparently they were held hostage for 150 days. But they were actually freed by the guy from North Korea. Captain Scar was actually the one who came through and saved them right before they were about to be executed. But there is no really explanation about what happened after the 150 days. Like, I don't know if maybe it's me, maybe I missed something timing wise, but there's 365 days in a year. So unless a year means something different in Korea, if they were held hostage for 150 days, where are the other 200 plus days? I'm just asking. So I don't know, because it was the 1 year anniversary of their death, not the 1 year anniversary of them leaving for Albania. But that's not really properly explained. I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, they're all back home. They meet up with their special forces friends. Big Boss gets promoted, but for some reason Wolf didn't get promoted. I don't understand why that is. It seems like he should have got a promotion too, because, I mean, unless I'm hearing it wrong, it seems like he's the same rank as Key. And definitely it seems like he has more experience and holds a higher position than Key does, but they seem to be the same rank now for some reason. But yeah, Big Boss gets promoted. There's a little romantic scene in the mess hall. The mess hall is like the big hall where all the troops eat, in case you're not familiar with the lingo. There's a scene in the mess hall where Wolf declares to Lieutenant Yoon what was in his will that she promised herself she was never going to read, and then he tells all of his subordinates to close their eyes, and he kisses her on the forehead. Well, she tells her subordinates to close their eyes, and when they do, she goes around the table and gives him a big old which, girl, I don't blame you, because truth be told, there's a couple of scenes in this show where right after people appeared from the dead, the next scene, if it was real life, would have been me and my loved one, Bow Chicka Wow Wow. But that happens. Lieutenant Yoon and Dr. Kong meet together, I guess, to, talk about our good fortune that our men are back or whatever. And there was a scene, which I can't remember if it was in 15 or 16, where Lieutenant Yoon explains to Dr. Kong how Big Boss and Wolf met. And we knew that it had to do with her, of course, because she had went to this wedding with Wolf. Like, they first met when she went to the wedding with Wolf for his ex-girlfriend. And she said, in exchange, you'll tell Big Boss that we're dating. Well, they flash back to right after the wedding, and Wolf is under the umbrella. All of a sudden, somebody runs up under the umbrella and throws their arm around him, and you look up, and it's the smiling face of Big Boss. And what do you hear in the background? You are my everything. It's just so funny, because it's just like totally one of those love at first sight type moments, but like between the two bros. And Big Boss is like, yeah, we're going the same direction. Let's share an umbrella. What does Wolf say? We're dating. All of a sudden, that arm kind of creeps back over. Big Boss is like, he's like, no, I'm dating Lieutenant Yoon. Oh, okay. Well, they go in the bar, they share some drinks, they have some laughs, and, a friendship, a romance, a bromance is born. But yeah, that was really cute. Everything else gets tied up. Dr. Song and Dance, it turns out that Dr. Dance was waiting until she had paid off Song before she would really date him. She goes on his computer to find out what that secret file was that he had that he would never show her. Turns out there were pictures of her from the time she was in her teens to her 20s to her 30s. He's always wanted to propose to her, but I guess they just never could get it together in all this time. Oh, I almost forgot. The reason why she was on his computer is because Dr. Onu had gotten a USB file from our little boy over in Urk, him and his goat. They never did figure out the little boy's name, so they continue to call him Balaki. And also a letter from our friend, what is that girl's name? Lost it now. Little girl in the red dress. Anyway, she writes a letter to Dr. Kong where she wrote it in Hangul because she's trying to learn Korean, because she's like, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor so I can help you with patients in Korea. I thought that was so adorable. They even had her read it in Korean. I thought that was just, that was the sweetest little moment. I wish I could remember her name now, because it sucks that I can't. Little girl in the red dress, because for almost the entire series, all she wore was that red dress. But that happens, and then everyone's invited to Daniel's wedding. Daniel from Irk, the guy in the guy in the airport who's protesting. Anyway, him and his nurse are getting married. They explain kind of how they end up being a fake married couple and how they're finally getting really married. And everybody flies to Canada to do that. Onu breaks the fourth wall and tells us everything's happily ever after. Or is it? And then somebody runs through, the lights flicker, and then one of the waitresses runs through and says, "It's a volcano!" Which, are there a lot of volcanoes in Canada? I'm confused. Maybe it depends on where in Canada you're at. And of course, everybody, goes into battle mode, starts breaking the heels off shoes, starts rolling up their sleeves. And the last thing you see is everybody in their full regalia walking out to do battle once more. And that's the end of the series. And for me, I felt like it was a kind of weak finale, to be honest. I was glad to see the Doctor Song and Dance thing tied up. I still kind of want to know the little boy's name, Balaki Chwadi. We never did get his name. And we never really get any resolve with what happens with Nurse Choi, and does she ever get over her butterfingers. I wanted to see Onu's baby. I really wanted to see Onu and his wife's baby. I don't know why, but in my mind, I wanted to see what Onu's baby looks like. It's the Shawwal in me. And I wanted to see the reunion between Big Boss and his dad. Because, it's all well and good that Big Boss went to go find his girlfriend, but Big Boss had a father who thought he was dead. I would like to know how that got resolved, because, like I said, that was the most emotional moment in this entire series for me. And then, we never really know what happened with Chairman Sleezo. That didn't get resolved. In that year that Big Boss was gone, if I had been Dr. Kong, I would have gotten that loan money and I'd have opened my clinic. Or I'd have been getting ready to open my clinic by the time I got reunited with Big Boss, even though she didn't expect to be reunited with him. But things like that would have been the catalyst in my life to make some real changes, I think. But yeah, in terms of the finale, they did a good job of tying up most of those loose ends. But at the same time, I think that if 15 had been the end of the series, I would have been okay with that. It would have sucked that so many people died, but at the same time, it would have been a real ending for me. The way it wrapped up in the end, it really wasn't so real. There was even a moment where Dr. Kong and Big Boss go to Urk to go to their abandoned ship, and they make out on their abandoned ship or whatever. I guess it's okay, but first of all, a lot of what happened in the last episode felt like it was an excuse to advertise. How many of us saw Dalcom Coffee, Subway, Colon Sport, Isis Water, Samsung, whatever that travel website was? They really did heavy-handed with the advertising. And then it just felt like the timing was kind of off on the very last episode. I know everything was supposed to be pre-filmed, and so they weren't supposed to be going back and doing reshoots or doing follow-up shoots, but I don't know. It just, I would have been happier with some of the last couple of weeks being the finale rather than this being the finale. But at the end of the day, all suspension of reality and disbelief aside, the core thing I loved about this series was the relationships and the actors who brought out these relationships. I thought that the actors in this series did a great job of showing the real love between all of these different characters, the real friendship between all these different characters, and they really wore their hearts on their sleeves. I've only ever seen Song Joong Ki in one other thing before this, and that was Wolf Boy. And even though he was good in Wolf Boy, I don't think I really got his full acting potential from that. But from this show, he is so incredibly charming. He is just a walking ball of charm. He's got those boyish good looks, but also when it's time to get serious, he can pull that off as well. And he just seems like a happy-go-lucky guy. I don't know how much of this is really him and how much of him is playing this character, but he just was really amazingly sweet in this. The lady who plays Dr. Kong, I watched her in Full House so long ago. But she's still just as beautiful and fun as ever. In fact, you can tell she's mature, not just as a person, but as an actress. I felt like her acting was a lot more fluid, a lot more natural than it was in the Full House days. But I mean, there's got to be a decade apart from these two things, so you'd expect her to mature in that time. I thought that Onu, even though I didn't like all the crying they made him do, I thought that he's great comic relief, and I hope that if SM continues to put him in shows, they'll keep on putting him in that way, because I think it really suits him. I don't want to see him do dramatic stuff. I want to see him stick to comedy. I thought that the song and dance couple, they were just so adorable, and I wanted a whole show with those two. I wanted a whole show with the bromance. I wanted a whole show with the yomance. I mean, there were so many good things here when it came to people. And then also like little stuff that they threw in there, like the whole thing with Daniel and the medical companies killing people by not offering medicine. That was a little bit heavy-handed, but there were other little things they slipped in there in the show about, exactly what destroys people in a war zone that has nothing to do with bullets, that I thought was important. That disease affects people, starvation, lack of resources, dangerous living conditions, all this stuff, and how it is not just the soldiers with their guns that free a people. It's the volunteer doctors with their time. It's kind-hearted people like the lady over at the bar who are giving food and housing to less fortunate people. Like, it takes all of us to ensure peace. Peace is not met through just guns, but it's also through food, through medicine, through housing, through all the other things that people need in order to live a happy life. So at the end of the day, I really enjoyed this series. I really liked talking about it with you guys. There wasn't a lot of interaction between us this time like there was in maybe a couple of the past series, but that's okay. And in the comment section down below, if you would, please help me decide what our next series is going to be. We can take a break or two if you want. I mean, if you guys want to take a couple weeks off, you're more than welcome. But I'd love to know what our next series is going to be, because I really enjoy having friends to talk about the K-dramas with, and I would love to hear you guys' opinions about this series as a whole and these last 2 episodes as a finale, because this feels like this was like strike number 3 for finales. Like, they tried 3 different types of finales on us over the last few weeks. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!